Karen,
Yes.
what would you say if I told you that there might be beings not from this earth who are here specifically to help mankind create a better world?
I would say thank God, because we need all the help we can get.
We certainly do, right? And what if I told you that there is a group of people that hold these beings in the highest regard and have even created a religion dedicated to spreading and acting on the teachings of advanced extraterrestrial beings?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Does it?
It does.
Well, it just so happens that the Aetherius Society, and I hope I said it somewhat correctly, is just such an organization.
Oh,
They say that these beings recognize the extent of suffering on Earth, and they've made countless sacrifices in their mission to help us.
wow.
Yep. Now, the founder of this inspiring society was an Englishman named George King, who did so shortly after he was contacted in London by an extraterrestrial intelligence known as Aetherius. Sadly, Mr. King has since passed away, and we no longer have direct access to him. However, today, we do have the next best thing, Karen. Mr. King's personal assistant and the director of the Aetherius Society since 2001. This one is going to truly be eye-opening, so don't go anywhere because the Skeptic Metaphysicians starts now.
My name is Will.
And I'm Karen.
And unlike Mulder and Scully,
we both want to believe.
so we've embarked on a journey of discovery.
We've talked to people deeply entrenched in the spiritual and metaphysical world.
We've thrown ourselves into weird and wonderful experiences. I even joined a coven of witches.
And wait, you joined a coven?
Yep, all in the interest of finding something
Anything.
that will prove that there's something beyond this physical,
three-dimensional world we all live in.
This is the Skeptic Metaphysicians.
Hey there, I'm Will.
And I'm Karen.
And today we're diving into the cosmic. The Aetherius Society is a spiritual organization founded in the mid-1950s by Dr. George King, who claimed to have had a significant spiritual experience where he was contacted by extraterrestrial beings. Now, the society combines elements of Eastern philosophy, Western mysticism, and teachings related to cosmic or extraterrestrial beings, emphasizing service to humanity, spiritual evolution, and the idea that Earth is a living being.
Ooh.
Now, central to the Society's beliefs is that advanced beings from the other planets play an essential role in helping humanity through spiritual guidance. These beings, referred to as cosmic masters, are believed to assist Earth in its spiritual evolution and protect it from disasters. Today, we're privileged to be accompanied by Mr. King's personal assistant and the director of the Society, Paul Nugent, to share with us the amazing experiences that it was to have lived and learned so much from this astounding religion's founder. Welcome to the show, Paul Nugent.
Well, thank you very much, Will and Karen. And I think you've distilled the Aetherius Society extraordinarily well in that introduction. The only thing that I would, dare I say, correct is that I'm not I'm not the director. I am a director.
Oh.
We have several directors. And I was not the personal assistant. I was a personal assistant. There were three of us in the latter years of his life, but anyway, I just wanted to clarify that. But otherwise, excellent summation of the Aetherius Society.
Well, thank you. That means a lot to me because you never know how these things go. But I'm thrilled to hear that I actually said Aetherius Society correctly. So to give one to the Will. Second, it must be it is in 35 countries that the society is in. So
wow.
You do need quite a few people to help drive the message forward, I would assume. So it would make sense that there would be more than one director. And Mr. King, being such a big personality, would certainly need more than one assistant. So we're glad that we have you here with us.
It's great to be with you and to explain more about Dr. King and the spiritual philosophy of the Aetherius Society.
It's fascinating because honestly, until I started researching you, the only religion that I have heard about that speaks about extraterrestrial beings, I believe, was with Scientology, right?
That's what I was thinking.
Well, I don't know if they do. I'm not sure I entirely like the comparison. I often think that the Aetherius Society is the opposite end of the lens to Scientology, but that's not to sort of necessarily openly and publicly dismiss Scientology. There are others. I mean, Astara is one. There have been one or two, but certainly the Aetherius Society is the world's longest standing UFO organization, and we don't just see it in terms of the nuts and bolts of UFOs, but we see the whole thing far more seriously and far more importantly in a spiritual context.
Well, it is fascinating because to put the words UFO with spirituality, it's not usually something that's put together, except for we have heard people say that extraterrestrials are here to help humanity and things like that. But you take it very seriously. You take it to the nth degree. What are the major tenets of the religion? Because you do take this more of as a way of life, right?
It's totally a way of life. It's a way of being. I think, in a way, you could more reasonably argue that it's ridiculous for humanity to think that we are alone in the universe. With the wonderful thing about one of the wonderful things about science and technology, particularly in recent decades, is that they've allowed us to realize how small and tiny, and you could even say insignificant, we are in the universe. It literally is vast. In fact, I was having a conversation with someone earlier this week. I'm led to understand, it's extremely difficult to believe, but it seems to be the science, that there are more stars, i.e. suns, than there are grains of sand on all the beaches and in all the deserts on the surface of Earth. I mean, it blows the mind.
It really does.
Wow.
Yeah. And even to be making that comparison allows one to realize how small and insignificant we are. I often think that, how aware is the spider in the corner of this room, that it's in a room, that's in a house, that's in a town, that's in a state, that's in a country, that's on a world, that's in a solar system and a galaxy, etc., etc., etc. And I think culturally and traditionally, that's been very much our sort of very egocentric perspective on our place in the cosmos. And I think that, hopefully that very sort of limited, narrow perspective is going to be broken. And because I think that the realization of our true place in the cosmos, our insignificance, and yet at the same time, the fact that we are in this cosmos, we are a part of this incredible organism of the universe, we're a living aspect of it, hopefully will allow us to fundamentally and profoundly change as human beings in our understanding of ourselves, of each other, and what we are collectively a part of.
Right. Well, you've said a mouthful, and in order to
yes, pardon me.
No, it's wonderful, and I love the passion with which you share this whole subject. You can tell that you really it is your life, it is your way of life, which is wonderful to hear. But for the audience to really truly understand what it is we're talking about, first we need to rewind it a little bit and talk about George King. Now, before I need to refer to him as Dr. King or Mr. King.
We called him the master, but you can call him Dr. King or Mr. King. But he had a doctorate, so we right. Technically we called him Dr. King, but we knew him as the master because we recognized him literally as a yoga master. That's primarily what he was. Right,
and there's a whole thing about actually King yoga that we'll have to get into in a minute. Yeah, there's such a thing. So can you tell us a little bit more about Dr. King's...
And the first contact.
Exactly.
That's what I want to know.
Yes, about. Exactly. Like, give us more information about that pivotal moment when Dr. King was contacted by the extraterrestrial being.
Yeah, because, precisely, that was a very pivotal moment. Very, very briefly, Dr. George King was born in England in 1919. 20 years later, in 1939, tragically, the Second World War came along. And he was, you could say, of prime fighting age. He was 20 years old. But he knew inherently that thou shalt not kill was a law bigger than mankind. There was a truth, there was a profundity, there was a greatness in that whole sentiment. And so he became a conscientious objector. Not that he couldn't recognize that Nazism was a terrible thing that needed to be countered, but he wasn't willing to go and kill fellow human beings for the sake of it. What he did was he joined the fire brigade in London, which subsequently went through what's known as the Blitz, which was the bombing of civilians. And he saw that, he witnessed that firsthand, and the devastation and the madness of that, the inhumanity of that, the craziness of that. Why? Who are we? What are we doing to each other? And it led him to study, coming out of the Second World War, or perhaps probably more likely during it, it led him to study and practice various forms of yoga. And he did it very intensely. He did it for up to 8 hours a day over a 10-year period. And when you practice various forms of yoga, he was using primarily what is known as pranayama, breathing exercises, mantra yoga. When you do it that intensely, it causes a force that we all have in the base of the spine called the kundalini to rise through a channel in the spine called the sushumna channel, open the chakras or psychic centers that we all have in our aura, and you gradually bring this force up. With such intensity, he was eventually able to bring the kundalini up to the highest centers, the Christ center and the crown chakra. When one's able to do that, one goes into a state of samadhic consciousness or cosmic consciousness. There have been various individuals throughout our past who've been able to do this. It's very difficult to do. It's very demanding, but it's ultimately the goal for all of us. And Dr. King was able, George King as he was then in his early to mid 30s, was able to do this. And then one Saturday morning in May of 1954, we believe it was May the 8th of 1954, he literally heard a voice, and he said it was as stark as a gunshot going off. He heard a voice in his small apartment in London, in a place called Maida Vale in London. And the voice said, "Prepare yourself. You are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament."
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. He'd never heard of interplanetary parliament.
Who has?
Yeah, exactly. Who has? We haven't. We're a part of it, but we're not aware of that. We're part that there's something much greater going on, and something that is literally cosmic and divine, and truly magnificent in every sense of the word. He was washing dishes at the time. He dropped the dishes. All he knew with his yogic training was that this was no psychic apparition. What he heard was for real. He knew that he had been developing and training himself for some kind of purpose. He just, as I say, had never heard of interplanetary parliament. He didn't know where the voice had come from, what it meant. The people who he was able to ask, which probably weren't very many, all could give him no answer as to what it had been. So a week later, he went back into meditation. He said, "I am not leaving this apartment until I understand what that contact was." And there he was, a yoga master who's quite well known, or certainly was well known at the time, from India, came through his locked door, came into his room, sat down opposite him, and explained what that communication had been. And he gave George King various other yogic techniques that he would need to adopt in order to gain rapport with these intelligences existing upon higher dimensions of the other planets within our solar system. The being who had made that statement, "Prepare yourself, you are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament," goes by the name of Aetherius. Hence, we are the Aetherius Society.
Right.
And we understand that the master Aetherius is an intelligence living and has lived for thousands of years upon the higher dimensions of Venus.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay. So in that last 5 words, you just open up a whole can of worms. The extraterrestrial being known as Aetherius lived in the higher dimensions of Venus. Oh, wow, where do I go? There's so many places to go. Are you aware of the CE5 movement?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So the CE5 movement is a movement that was formed a while back. It stands for Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And basically what they do is they go out in the field and they consciously call extraterrestrial beings or UFOs to them because they feel, just like you, that they are here to help humanity.
Right.
And apparently, I think for the most part, they see lights in the skies and things like that. And occasionally they'll get visitations and things. But from my understanding, the communication that you have or that Aetherius Society members have it's a little bit less direct. Is that fair to say?
A little bit less direct. You mean CE5 is a little bit less direct than the communication which Dr. King had?
So basically, Dr. King, he didn't see a being in front of him, right? He channeled, he heard.
No, he has done. He did do, but it's just on that particular occasion he didn't.
Oh, okay.
But you see, if a fundamental concept of all life, not just terrestrial life, a principle of certainly of the Aetherius Society, but not just solely the Aetherius Society by any stretch of the imagination, is the law of karma. I mean, we would say that even Christ taught the law of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. The Lord Buddha stated it as action and reaction are opposite and equal. And to my way of thinking, I mean, I fully accept the law of karma, but to my way of thinking, the law of karma makes no sense without the reciprocal law of reincarnation. In other words, it carries over. What we sow, what we reap in one life carries over to the next life, all with the actual fundamental purpose of us raising Kundalini so that we can attain cosmic consciousness. But where do we go in that time between lives? When we die, awaiting reincarnation, where do we go? We go to another sphere, another realm, another dimension, if you like, around this earth. And depending on our karmic pattern on earth, we have both higher realms of varying degree, but we also have lower realms of varying degree. And that concept is the same on the other planets, except they don't have lower realms because they don't have, so to speak, shall we say, negative karma. It's all of a higher dimension. So when we go to Venus, yes, we're going to the physical realm of Venus. These intelligences are not existing on that realm. They are on a higher level of frequency, which is in that sense all physical to all intents and purposes.
Right.
But it's not the same. So that is what we're talking about in terms of other dimensions of the other planets and the master Aetherius. We believe that Jesus and Buddha both came from Venus.
Wow. Okay.
So what are your thoughts on when we die? Do we become these ethereal creatures or beings, or are they also kind of waiting for them to get to the next level? Does that make sense?
When we die, I think we're essentially just as we are here on Earth. We just find ourselves in a different dimension according to the whole frequency that we've created while in this incarnation. I think we're more awakened. I mean, I had a very remarkable experience with my own brother when he died literally a couple of years ago, very, very, very sadly, very tragically, and very unexpectedly. And I had this communication with my brother, who found himself on another, well, actually between realms. He didn't even know he died, poor chap. And he was amazed to find that he was, to all intents and purposes, still alive. He just wasn't in his physical body. And I think that's how it is until we adjust to where we are. And then at the right karmic time, we will take on once again human form, and go through this whole rather, one might say, rather tedious and slow process of.
All right.
It's almost like we come here, and then some people believe in soul contracts, some don't, but we come here, and if there's this karma from the past, it's like the whole time we're here, we're trying to leave here. So it can.
Yeah, it's almost like a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
When we're here, we can't wait to go there.
Yeah, so we're here to learn everything to get back.
Right, but then when we're there, we can't wait to get here, so we can even have the human experience.
Well, we are here, we are here to leave here. Our primary purpose is to leave here. Christ demonstrated it to us. The only way you're going to actually leave is through ascension. We are here to attain ascension. It's a lesson and a demonstration for every single one of us. The question is, how do you get there? How do you get there? And it's not just a matter of wishful thinking. I wish it was, but no, it isn't.
I'd be there by now if that was the case. Many times over.
Exactly.
Right.
No, it's a process. It is a yogic process, you could say, but it's a process of realization. It's a process of realizing who and what we really are in that divine cosmic sense. And that realization inevitably brings about a sensation of love. When one truly begins to realize that I'm a part of this, that I exist in the wholeness of everything, it instinctively and naturally generates a sensation of love. Love leads to service. Love is care. You care. You care about everything. You care about the state of the world. You care about our environment. You care about cruelty. You care literally about everything in a very sort of wholesome, pure way. And it leads you to serve, to want to serve. It was been demonstrated by every single master who's ever come to this earth. You start to serve because you realize the preciousness and the sacredness, literally, of not only everything, but of every moment, of every single moment. And that is a path towards enlightenment. And that path towards enlightenment is a path towards cosmic consciousness. And when we can attain cosmic consciousness literally at will, then we will ascend. Right. And then we will leave Earth. But you see, even not everybody who has attained cosmic consciousness necessarily ascends. That's why you have what's called the ascended masters, who actually choose to stay here to help illumine humanity.
Because, and some people believe that Jesus and Buddha were just such ascended masters that it stayed behind. No?
Well, maybe they do, and I'm not here to sort of argue against that. In the Aetherius Society, we believe they were what's actually called avatars. As Sri Krishna was an avatar. An avatar is an intelligence who has come literally from elsewhere, we would say, the higher realms of another world, another planet within our own solar system, who's come here to teach, instruct. Sri Krishna taught us the whole principles of yoga. Buddha taught us the wonderful path of compassion, as did Jesus, love and service. I wouldn't necessarily, we in the Aetherius Society wouldn't say that's necessarily actually been their primary role. We would say that Jesus came here to perform an outstanding and essential karmic manipulation that averted a catastrophe upon Earth at that time. But at this, he obviously did teach us how we should rightfully be living. And had we adopted those teachings, or the teachings of Buddha or Sri Krishna, we would be living in a very different world. Right. Unfortunately, we tend to sort of dismiss them too easily.
Sure. Go ahead.
So in all of your work with the society, have you ever had contact?
I haven't had personal contact. No, I haven't. Because again, you see, Dr. King described the transmissions he received in a way a little bit similar to a radio set, and which is the mind. And we're all capable of receiving. We can have telepathic thoughts or whatever. We all receive thoughts, impulses, and we put out thoughts, etc. If we were to gain mastery through the process of yoga, then we would have control over the mind that would allow us to become a very finely tuned radio set, which is what he developed. And because he had such a finely tuned mind through the experience of samadhic consciousness, he was able to connect, if you like, with the mind belt of those beings on the higher spheres, actually not just on other planets, but also on our own world. I am too dumbed down, I'm afraid. I'm too ordinary and I'm too human to actually.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit, Paul.
Okay, so
I'm being honest, at least.
Now, if you haven't had this contact, because a lot of people, seeing is believing. What is it that cinched it for you, that made you believe this is true and decide to be involved?
That's a very good question, Karen. When I came across the Aetherius Society in the sort of early 1980s, I had recently read the Four Gospels. I knew there was something missing in my life. I didn't know where to turn or what to do. I did have a Bible, having been raised, I'm English. We were in a Church of England. I had a Bible. And I read the Four Gospels, and it resonated with me very, very seriously. I felt and knew intuitively that here is someone who actually understands how we should be living our life. I was a young man, and I was looking for that. Well, I wanted to know that, how I should live my life. And it was more important than anything else, in point of fact. However, I was a colleague from work was a member of this organization called the Aetherius Society. And my boss, who was a wonderful mentor as well, he was studying Eastern philosophy at a school in London, which I also attended, which opened me to the concepts of karma and reincarnation, etc. But anyway, when I came to the Aetherius Society, I began to attend their services on a Sunday morning. And every Sunday service, we still do this, I'm sure we'll continue to do this, we play one of the cosmic transmissions that was received by Dr. George King in 1958 on 12 consecutive Sundays. And these teachings are called the 12 blessings. And we believe that they were given by Jesus, as I say, on 12 consecutive Sundays in 1958. Now, it's easy to sort of say that. It's quite another thing to believe that. What made me believe it? What made me accept it? What made me sort of delve deeper into the Aetherius Society was the profundity, the exquisiteness, the fundamental truth of these blessings. They were profound. They were exactly, precisely what our whole world is calling out for. This cosmic perspective of who we are, what we are a part of. The fact that the earth is a living being, even the sun is a living being. Even the galaxy is a living being. It's all living. It's all alive. We're a part of it. We're a living part of this whole one essential unity, this oneness, this vastness. And it was just simply too important, too serious, too profound for me to ignore. And so I began, as I say, to take it all far more seriously. And that's why I'm talking to you now, 40 plus years later.
Wow.
Now, these transmissions that you play on Sundays, is it recordings of Dr. King speaking the transmissions, or is it something else?
Well, he would go into what we call a positive yogic samadhic trance. He would go into a very elevated state, the most elevated state of consciousness a human being is capable of. And in that state, Jesus, we believe, coming from a higher dimension of Venus, crazy as that may sound to our very limited terrestrial, dumbed down, understanding.
Yes. Yes.
But communicating through the voice of Dr. George King, you will hear it's the voice of Jesus, which is different to the voice of the Master Aetherius, which is different to the voice of Mars Sector 6, for example. They were able to use him as a conduit through whom they could communicate. He was in his whole body, he was paralyzed. His body was paralyzed. It would go cold because all of his consciousness had been raised into the Christ and crown chakras. He was in a very elevated state. He himself did not know what was being spoken through him at that time.
Sure.
And so that is what one is listening to, and what we play in our Sunday services.
So you mentioned the Bible earlier, and Catholicism or Christianity as a whole, that's their map, their way forward, their lessons of how to be live the right life. Does the Aetherius Society have anything similar that informs the membership that this is what we believe, this is what we are trying to achieve, this is how we want to move this thing forward? Or is it mostly these transmissions that you're talking about?
Well, it's a bit of both, actually, Will. But the fundamental tenet of the Aetherius Society, and in this sense, you could say it was the fundamental tenet of the transmissions being communicated through him, although it goes much broader than this. And you could even say it's the fundamental tenet of the whole universe is service, or to use an unpopular word, is sacrifice. The whole of manifestation, conscious manifestation, is sacrificing itself. The galaxy is sacrificing itself so that lesser life streams within the galaxy can gain experience, because that's what it's all about. We are all here to gain experience, and fundamentally experience of God, of this thing we're all a part of. And it just gets more and more and more exquisite. Right. This is the great irony of it. We're delaying our bliss, if you like. We're delaying our joy. We're delaying our understanding of this fundamental soul journey that we're all making. It gets more and more and more incredible, and in that sense, I suppose, ecstatic. But the way to attain it is by giving up of oneself, as Jesus actually taught himself. I can't remember the exact quote; it's been too long ago. But to essentially lose yourself, and in losing yourself, you gain freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you just answered my next question, was going to be, why would these extraterrestrial beings have a stake in what happens to us? You just mentioned it, right? The sacrifice. They believe in sacrificing of themselves to help other lesser beings grow and ascend?
Well, I don't know if I think you're a married. I understand you're a married couple. I don't know if I'm a married man. I don't know if you have children.
We do. We have a daughter.
You. Right. Well, I'm sure it goes utterly without saying you love your daughter.
Beyond doubt.
Beyond doubt. And you do anything for your daughter.
Absolutely anything, yes.
Right. And it's a little bit the same with these cosmic intelligences. They love us not as their children, but as a part of themselves, a part of this same wholeness. And the more realization one has, the more one realizes that it is all a part of this infinite oneness, and that anything that suffers, and we suffer on humanity, it's, you could say it's almost entirely self-inflicted, but
indeed, and still ongoing.
It pains them. But they can't, with your child has to, or children have to learn for themselves. Mm-hmm. We have to learn for us. They can't just intervene and go and tidy our own bedroom and do our maths project and everything else. They can't do it for us. Right. They can give us the tools that enable us to do it for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that is how you see, the essential energy of creation, of God. I spell that G-O-D, I'll spell this out. It's L-O-V-E. It's L-O-V-E.
Right.
In great cosmic sense of what this energy is. Right. And that runs through the entire gamut.
Right. So I'm sorry, just really quick. I just wanted to make a statement, and it's all yours. So they must feel right now like, when you're seeing your daughter make the worst mistake of their life every day. They must be like, "What? Oh my God!
That's what I was thinking." I mean, there's there's the really great people, and maybe they have the beings that are part of them, and then someone has Hitler, and they get the shim sham. It's like, whoa.
It's like you should know better by now. How old are you? You should know better by now, and yet here we are making the same mistakes over and over and over again.
Well, that brings in a very important point. We haven't mentioned my book, the wonderful. I say wonderful. I'm the author of it. Maya.
But very objective opinion, of course.
Yes, of course. Yes, indeed. Well, I'm getting some rather nice reviews on Amazon. But,
congratulations.
But thank you. But coming back to what you were just saying, our understanding is that we've had two previous civilizations on Earth. Atlantis, and before that Lemuria.
Lemuria, sure.
But both of which we destroyed through the intense misuse of atomic energy, atomic power, nuclear bombs, etc. We even go further than that and say we actually destroyed a planet upon which we previously existed over 18 million years ago, called Maldek. All that remains of Maldek is the asteroid belt. So they can see us repeating the same mistakes. Particularly, flying saucers were most commonly cited right after the Second World War, because what had we done? We'd unleashed the atom once again. We created atom bombs. In the Cold War, we went far further in developing the hydrogen bomb, which was 1,000 times, more powerful than the atom bomb. We've done this before. We did it in Atlantis. We've done it in Lemuria, and they could see us as children making that same crazy mistake. And yet we can't, you see, it's not just about us, because it doesn't, it's also about the Earth. The Earth is a living, highly evolved conscious intelligence who has literally had to put up with, or not put up, she's accepted the incarnation of mankind because we destroyed Maldek. So we had to have somewhere to go. She said, all right, you can come here. I'll hold myself back while you go through this very slow process of reincarnation. But she can't hold herself back indefinitely.
Right. Mm. She must be incredibly pissed off right now.
Yeah.
Well, we could be happy that cosmic intelligences don't get, shall we say, pissed off. They're too great.
Shoo, dodge that one.
Oh my gosh.
So would you say that these beings, throughout history, people have seen angels, and even in the New Age movement, people talk about guides and intelligences from that are conglomerations of beings, etheric beings in the other dimensions who are here to help us. Are we talking about the same thing here?
I think we are, essentially. Yes. I mean, it might be a bit blurred, but it's essentially the same thing.
Sure. That makes sense.
Beings, more evolved beings on other dimensions, whether they're around this Earth or upon other planets.
Right.
So why do you think that all of the movies that talk about, well, I would say like 98% of the movies that talk about the extraterrestrial beings are all horror?
That's another wonderful question, Karen, because it brings in, you see, the point is that there are, not everything in the universe is beneficent, if that is the right word.
Mm-hmm.
There are in beings, intelligences, and very powerful intelligences that do not. I mean, why do we have wars? We have wars and crime and everything because there are intelligences. We would call them black magicians. There is a force of evil. There is a force of evil that does seek to manipulate conditions upon Earth, to construe situations where we war with each other, we cheat on each other, we push drugs on each other, we crime in all its aspects, and it's very feasible. I don't want to malign the movie industry at all, but because there are also some other wonderful movies, but that these darker forces are seeking in a very negative way to sow seeds in humanity of a negative nature. What's important is for us to and we can do this by sort of getting in touch with our own intuition and our own conscience. No, I reject that. I don't accept that, and instead invoke the energy and the essence of love and a greater cosmic wisdom and kindness. So to that extent, I would say that humanity is and has been in a conflict, and you could say it's what's behind the myth of the Garden of Eden. It's what's behind Lemuria. It's what's behind Atlantis. It's what's behind the destruction of Maldek. That negative influence and powerful negative influence does exist, and it's for each and every single one of us as an individual to be mindful and conscious of that, and to get in touch with, as I say, one's own intuitive sense of what's right and wrong. For me, it was reading the four Gospels. Here I recognize, okay, someone who understands. And I fortunately took the steps to adhere to that and follow that. But many people don't.
Right. So while I tried to get a grip on the fact that you said two of Karen's questions were really good, and not a single time have you said mine have been good.
Well, I did appreciate your summation at the very beginning.
Yes, you got that.
All right. I'll give you that. But it is interesting because the deeper I go down this path of awakening, the less I can actually, I don't want to say tolerating, but that's probably the only word. I will. There was one show that I started watching very recently, and halfway through it, I'm like, I can't. This feels, it is so, the energies are so negative. It's just it was so uncomfortable for me that I literally, and I'm a TV guy and I'm a movie guy. That's what I do for a living. I had to walk away and not look back because it was so uncomfortable. And the more awake, quote unquote, I become, the less I tolerate those kinds of things. I used to love horror movies. I was a big horror movie fan. Friday the 13th when I was growing up, Nightmare on Elm Street, all those movies, Psycho. I can't watch them anymore. It's too much for me. And I think it's probably because my energies, my resonance doesn't align with those types of frequencies anymore. At least I like to tell myself that.
Well, let me bring you up almost to Karen's level there. Will.
Oh no! Almost or
no. I think she's still ahead on points, but I think that sentiment, you've touched on something extremely important, because again, I talk about that there is this awakening that's going on. I mentioned Lemura, I mentioned Atlantis, I mentioned the fact that the earth is a living being who's withheld herself. That can only be done karmically for a certain period of time. That time has been reached. The earth has been given a tremendous infusion of energy. If you want to know more about that, you will have to literally read the book. But things are changing. Things are quickening on earth. They're quickening. I think we can all recognize it in every sphere, on every level. And Absolutely. We are being called upon, each and every one of us, to listen, to hear that inner voice of conscience and truth that is speaking to every single one of us. And it goes without saying that there is this awakening that's taking place. There's this, hopefully, there's a growing awareness. And in this growing awareness, beginning to sort of shatter the culture of the political scene, the economic scene. I don't want to go into a political scene because it's bigger than that. I would sum it up by saying the only crisis we have on Earth is not a political crisis. It's not an economic or even an environmental crisis. It's a spiritual crisis. We have a spiritual crisis on Earth because we've lost that spiritual connection as an individual with the cosmos, with our environment, with every living thing. And that connection, the quickening, is forcing us to become far more aware of that divine connection.
If I wasn't tied up with cables and microphones and all, I would stand up and give you a standing ovation, because that is an excellent summation. And that's 100. I could not, to say I couldn't agree more, it's just so, it doesn't even come close to covering how I feel about it, because you're absolutely right. When you look at the political problems that we're having, especially even in this country right now, let alone the whole entire world, that's a very surface level thing. When you look deeper into it, what's causing these divisions? It is a falling out of connection with spirituality and a quickening of that mentality, that mindset of scarcity that has become so widespread that now there's this fissure happening between those that are awakening and realizing, oh, yes, we are one and we need to help each other, and those that say, nope, I'm in it for myself.
Well, I think that I'm in it for myself. That's part of it, because I think as we've lost the connection, there's that like deep sort of loneliness or that aloneness.
Yes,
or
there
it's
is.
only me.
Yeah.
And people don't know how to deal with that.
Right.
And so you're banding with people that might not necessarily be the right type of people or something, but it's something that's familiar that you can hang on to. And I think that it's tough, man. Yeah. It's a really hard situation right now.
So how do you get through that? How do you reach the people that are so separated, so disconnected from who they really are?
Well, as you encounter all we can do is be our authentic selves. I know that's a cliche, but I think that the more honest we are as individuals, the more brave we are as individuals. In other words, when I say brave, to actually speak our truth without fear. And because what's behind that sense of bravery is the essence of love. And so, as I say, the more authentic and genuine and honest we are, the more others will recognize that and respond to that. It's when we live in fear that we're in danger. So it's to come out of that and speak one's truth, so to speak.
Right.
And I think we have to really make a conscious effort for that. And it's almost like they say it takes 14 days for something to become a habit, or 14 weeks, 14 something. But
minutes, seconds?
Yeah, longer than that. But like, for example, like today in traffic, I used to get really frustrated when I would get cut off or this. And I still do from time to time. But I have made this conscious effort to think, I wonder if something's going on with them. I wonder if they're going to the hospital. I wonder if, maybe something's going on and I don't know about it. So now that's almost my first reaction. and it just feels better because I don't get angry.
Right. There's a difference. You are an angel on this planet where we're just regular human beings walking, trying to get through life. So it's easier for you to think that way. For me, I'm like, wow, how dare they think of no one but themselves and block the whole traffic lane?
But it took an effort. It took me consciously thinking about that. You know?
But you thought about it.
I did.
Whereas I'm just like, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. I don't ever think that way.
I'm here to remind you.
All right. Well, let's take a moment and actually dive into your book, because that's something I absolutely want to make sure we touch on. When we've talked a lot about the Aetherius Society, we've talked about these extraterrestrial beings that are here to sacrifice themselves to help us to ascend. But what we haven't really touched on too much was how much time you spent in close contact with Dr. King. Now, being with someone that is that enlightened and that connected must have been astounding, first of all. Do you touch on that at all in your book?
Yes, I do. I mean, the most unusual, in other words, sort of unhuman or uncommon, certainly, experiences I ever had were in the presence of Dr. George King, who, as you rightly mentioned, I had the opportunity to be one of his personal assistants in the latter years of his life. What drew me there, what took me there, was my taking all of this very seriously, more seriously than the orthodox route, as you say in America, through life. Why I made that choice, because all of my sort of friends who are interested now getting their own copies of my Amar and saying, look what happened to Paul, but which is wonderful. And it's what's even more wonderful is the fact that we've remained friends throughout all of these years. But no, I didn't take the so-called orthodox conventional route through life. I was seeking a higher truth, and when I came across Dr. George King and the Aetherius Society, I put it first and foremost, and it culminated with me being, as I say, one of his personal assistants. And yes, I did have very, when I say unusual, certainly unconventional, in other words, sort of cosmic experiences, something that were, you could say not of this world. But in saying that, and this was a hallmark of Dr. King, he was as down to earth as you could come. He was very down. His feet were on the ground. He wasn't here for party tricks. Some yoga masters, they'll sort of do this. George King could do party tricks, but we're not here for party. It's more serious than party tricks.
Sure. So no levitation, no bilocation, no astral projection, just straight.
Well, there was. There certainly was bilocation. I certainly didn't personally witness levitation, although I'm sure he could have done that. But he I mean, again, I for your listeners, I really hope you'll read the book, because Dr. George King, we certainly believe, was one of three cosmic intelligences who took on human form for a very essential purpose. I mentioned that, Jesus and Buddha, but certainly Jesus was here. Yes, he taught, but he was actually here to perform a major cosmic manipulation, karmic manipulation. Dr. George King and the other two avatars, or adepts as we refer to them, who came to this earth, were here to, we talked about earlier on about evil magicians. They go to the lower astral realms. Yes, we have the higher realms, but there are lower astral realms. There are denizens of black magicians. And as we go into this new world, those intelligences, so-called, cannot be allowed to exist. they're extraordinarily powerful. They've manipulated much of what plays out on the surface of this earth, including, you could say, the crucifixion of Christ. And Dr. King, as one of these three adepts, or three intelligences, adepts, avatars from other worlds, came here for a very definite purpose, to clean out the very worst of the lower astral realms, to free the chains, if you like, that have bound humanity to this ignorance, because everything is changing, everything is being shifted. I've said enough to give a cue to reading far more about it in my book, Maya Maya.
So it's called Maya?
Maya Maya. Maya is a Sanskrit word for illusion. Yes, and Maya as in quagmire. And it's the quagmire of illusion that we have existed in, dating all the way back, if you like, to the so-called Garden of Eden. Right. It's the ignorance of humanity, but it's being shifted. It's being changed. We are awake. There's a great cosmic awakening that's going on. And I try to sort of elaborate on that in the book.
Maya Meyer. That makes perfect sense. I'm hoping that so many people who are listening right now will go out and get the book, because it sounds fascinating. But I am thrilled to plant my flag in the ground and claim I am the first to buy the book the minute we hang up this call, because I am absolutely intrigued. So thank you so much for that. Where can someone find it if they wanted to purchase it?
Well, it was literally, you can also put another flag in the ground together with Karen, that you are holding this interview in the very first week that the book has been published.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It was published in the UK, literally, I think, on September the 1st. It is, needless to say, available on Amazon. And the more people who will go and buy it on Amazon, and the more people who will give it a rating, I don't think it necessarily has to be 5 stars. I'll accept 5 stars, but it doesn't have to.
If they must.
Okay, fine.
But that, as I understand, algorithms and everything else will have a bearing on how book distributors and all the rest of it pick up the book. But it is certainly available on Amazon, and you'll get it within a day or two.
Wonderful.
Great.
Well, we're going to make sure that we put a direct link in our show notes. So if you're interested in Maya Meyer by Mr. Paul Nugent, all you need to do is go to skepticmetaphysician.com, go to his episode page, and you'll see the direct link laid out there in our show notes. So it makes it super easy for you to access the book. And then if someone wanted to reach out to you to learn more about the Aetherius Society, or just to know more about you, what's the best place for someone to do that?
Well, if you really want to know more about me, I do actually have my own website, which is called sedimentofmysoul.com.
Ooh.
Yeah. But otherwise, go to aetherius.org. I mean, the main website, aetherius.org, or drgeorgeking.org, and you'll find more about Dr. George King and the Aetherius Society.
Well, I did go down a very deep rabbit hole when I started researching for this show, and I would urge anyone to look into it, because we literally, to say we just scratched the surface is not even giving it enough notice. There's so much about the Aetherius Society that is so astounding and inspiring. I will say one of the first things I looked at was, is the Aetherius Society a scam or a cult? Because, unfortunately, there's a lot of folks out there who are trying to take advantage of people. And what I found, I'm thrilled to say, is none of the above. So I am grateful for you coming on the show and helping us to understand about the society, which I admittedly had never heard of before, but now I'm thrilled to know about. And to give us a glimpse into that side of things. There's so much more I could have asked you, because I know that you really mix the scientific with the spiritual, which is right up my alley. But there's so much for you to explore and learn about the Aetherius Society. So if you're interested at all, we're going to head and put those links in our website, in our show notes as well, so you can have access to those. So, Paul, any last words before we say goodbye?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Will. And by asking me that excellent question, you've put yourself on fire.
Finally, there we go.
You've made it at the finish line. You've made it, because the only thing that I would raise or question is why, and you don't have to answer this, but why there is the word skeptic in your title, because I think that you are both wonderfully open to these much broader concepts.
Well, I will return the favor and say that is an excellent question, Paul. And I will go ahead and answer, because there are people who might be listening right now who may not be aware. When we first started the show, I was very much a skeptic. I asked those questions about, come on, were you high? Like, you've been drinking? How do you know this stuff? How could it be possible? So I was always trying to find the way forward, because I wanted to believe. I really truly wanted to know that this stuff was real. Over the course of the years of doing the show, I've very confident that there is no reason to be skeptical. However, those that are listening right now might be. So we feel there was a point where we're going to change the name of the show because it would no longer fit. However, we talked about it and we felt, no, we're going to keep it, because now we're not the Skeptic Metaphysicians. Our audience is.
Right. Yeah, very good.
And there is the answer to your excellent question.
Yeah. Very excellent.
we all get the prize. We all get the prize for our questions.
You know what? We talked about scarcity mentality. This is not the environment here. We are all about sharing the kudos and the wealth and the prizes. So we all get first place. So, Paul, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure having you on the show, and hopefully we'll stay in touch.
Likewise, thank you very, very much, Will and Kim. It's been Karen. But sorry, Will and Karen.
Right.
Thank you so very much for this conversation. I loved it.
We did as well. Thank you, and a huge thank you to you. We know that there are tons of options out there, and having you decide to come along on our journey of discovery with us is an absolute honor for us. We hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. If you did, and you feel called to give back, we invite you to visit our website at skepticmetaphysician.com, where you can donate to the show or subscribe as a member through our Buy Me a Coffee campaign. Your support will go a long way towards allowing Karen and I to bring you these wonderful conversations and teachings in more and more robust ways. Well, that's all for now. We will see you on the next episode of The Skeptic Metaphysician. Until then, take care.